A very familiar face is coming back to join the Duke basketball coaching staff. Super excited about that return. And how about this? Duke baseball is going to be hosting an NCAA Super Regional. We've got a big one today on Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So excited to have you here with us today on Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. And on today's show, we're going to focus a lot about Tyler Thornton being named the new assistant coach for the Duke men's basketball team. The former Duke guard, a captain as his senior season for Coach K, is coming back to join Jon Scheyer's staff for the upcoming season. Super excited about that. We'll dive into that conversation with Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated, and also want to talk about Duke baseball. They are heading to the Super Regionals. They're going to get to host the Super Regionals against a Murray State Racers squad that should make for a really fun weekend coming up in Durham. So all of that and more on today's show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Like these videos, share it with your friends, as your support here with us on YouTube continues to be very, very important, and I'm very appreciative of the community that we've built here with Locked On Blue Devils. So without further ado, let's bring Conor O'Neill on into today's program. And Conor, the news just doesn't seem to ever stop in the world of college athletics. We talked on Friday about it being the eve of June. Here we are, more and more things happening.
Yeah, there really is no off season, especially when you got two teams to track and they're both playing. I think I remote covered 8 baseball games in a 4-day stretch.
Man,
luckily it wasn't until day 3 that they overlapped game times. It was kind of nice having really long days, but only having one game to track at a time. But yeah, big basketball news. The roster's filled out, and now I think the coaching staff is filled out. There's still an opening, and we can get into that on your time.
Yeah, I do want to get to that opening, certainly, because it's so interesting the way that the staff has been built. But here we are with Tyler Thornton coming back to be an assistant coach for Duke. How did we get here from what you've been able to pick up on?
Yeah, Tyler Thornton's coached under 2 Duke former. Now I need to refresh my memory. I'm not sure if Kenneth Blakeney was ever at Duke at the staff. I know he played at Duke.
Right.
I'm completely blanking.
All in the Brotherhood family. Yes.
Yeah, I'm completely blanking on whether he was an assistant under Coach K. I'm assuming he was, because it seems like every coach when they graduate on has been at Duke under K. But anyway, Tyler Thornton, once his playing career was over, did some work at Marquette under Wojo, and then has been at Howard, or his hometown school, basically. He's a DC kid for the last 6 years. So you feel comfortable and confident bringing in a guy that has logged that many years already and is as young as Tyler is. I think he's about 30 or 31, if memory serves correct. I was able to pull up a really cool picture of Jon Scheyer's first season on Duke's bench was Tyler Thornton's senior year. And that year, the opener, they played Davidson. And there's a picture of John, Quinn Cook, and Tyler Thornton kind of joking, and John's telling them something on the bench. It's long enough ago that John was wearing the glasses. You can always kind of date the pictures of John on Duke's bench based on whether he's got the really thin framed glasses, or no glasses means he's wearing contacts.
And isn't it fun in that discussion as well? I'm glad you said that. You know, when you go back and look through the photos, are they wearing a full suit on the sidelines as well? You could see, like, wow, we've clearly moved into, since COVID, the more casual attire for these basketball coaches. But when you see photos of them out there rocking the suits, okay, they've been here a little while. It's not 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, let me ask you: are you pro suit or are you pro leisure wear for coaches?
I'm pro. I really don't care. And so if they're comfortable there in the leisure wear, I kind of like that it's a uniformed look, right? I feel like sometimes it feel like assistant coaches are trying to one up each other. And I will say now they're the coaches that want to make it a point to still be in a suit. And I think that like the Coach Cal, I don't want to throw him out there, but let's just throw him out there. Like, okay, cool, we get it. You're in a suit. Why not be more casual at this point when everybody else is? What about you?
I like the casual look.
Yeah.
Almost my opinion is kind of framed on some coaches telling me that they like it because when they go on the road, they don't have to worry about lugging around a suit or two.
No kidding. Yeah. Good
think about how much more difficult it is to pack and travel when you're having to deal with that, as opposed to just stuffing a quarter zip and
this up.
khakis in there. There is part of me though that kind of I try to say this as respectfully as possible. Some coaches do need to dress a little better on the sideline. Like some of these guys look like they're just going out for a morning brisk walk at the local mall, if people still do that. Like I do think there needs to be a little bit more I guess the word is decorum or fashion sense brought back to the benches. But yeah, not to sidetrack the complete discussion about coaches and what they wear. But Tyler Thornton is a great addition. Gives Duke a little bit of roots in the DMV. That's not necessarily an area where Duke had to be overly concerned, right? Like they've got the PVI pipeline going. They've always had pretty strong roots there, but just to get somebody that's that familiar with the area is going to pay off in recruiting.
Between PVI and Oak Hill Academy and some of those just bigger schools in that area, Duke's had a long run. Tyler Thornton played at Gonzaga High School there in the DMV area. I look 33 years old, so a few years older than I had even remembered with where Ty's at right now. But really exciting to have him join this Duke basketball coaching staff, and still a possibility to kind of add to it if Jon Scheyer wanted to do so. Let's kind of talk about that once we come back from our first break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I'm able to budget smarter and save more, all in one convenience, so that instead of juggling multiple apps, I'm able to just use Monarch Money and check everything in the same location. Managing money is so smooth when you use Monarch Money. Take control. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Monarch Money is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. My good pal Conor O'Neill is here from Devils Illustrated talking about Tyler Thornton, the new assistant coach for Duke basketball, a part of the Brotherhood. He was there at K Academy this past weekend. We're able to get the news announced by Duke. They're so good at the Brotherhood podcast drops. So timely in all of this. Some people thought it'd be Quinn Cook, and Duke's like, well, hey, here's Quinn Cook hosting the Brotherhood podcast with Tyler Thornton, and it's going to be released all at once.
Yeah, anytime you find yourself thinking, does Duke pay attention or not pay attention to what I'm saying, they might have seen what you said at some point, no matter how big or small your audience or circle or reach is.
Right.
They are keenly aware of what's being said about their program kind of at all times. Yeah, I think I don't have this on any authority, but it seems like Quinn Cook still wants to play a little bit.
Yeah.
His playing career isn't over. And, you know, when you get into those types of discussions, you never want to rush a guy into retirement. You never want to rush him when he feels like he's got juice left in the tank, because that's it's easy for us to sit back and say it, but it's a lot harder to convince an athlete that's been a pro for 10 years, you're done. Like that has to be a decision that they reach on their own.
Yeah, looking at Quinn Cook still under contract, it appears, in the Chinese Basketball Association. Immediately, just a few days ago, after he was there at K Academy, I saw he posted some videos of him working out, continuing to stay in kind of that basketball mode. So if he wants a coaching career ahead of him, it's going to be great, really exciting for him. But that will hold for a little bit. We've got Tyler Thornton coming back, who's got experience at Howard. Now he's making the step up to Duke. Will Avery is no longer appearing on the Duke staff directory. It appears that he is moving on. And now for Duke, they've got another opening on the staff as well, if they'd like, Connor.
Yeah, so you can have 5 assistants, and Duke has 4 now. They had 4 throughout the season, so they had that one spot that was never filled.
Right.
They, as we know and have talked about ad nauseum, Jay Lucas left. What was it, after the ACC tournament and before the NCAA tournament, or was it after
the UNC game, the regular season finale?
That's right, because somebody had a great joke when they started in a hole against Georgia Tech. Was Jay Lucas in charge of telling Duke the game had started? Yeah, I got to remember that. I got to repeat that to myself once a week just so I can remember the timeline.
That's a great joke. That's a great joke.
Yeah, that was when we could laugh during that Georgia Tech game instead of when all hell broke loose and Malik and Cooper
everybody's getting hurt.
In 3 minutes of each other. Yeah. So there were 3 assistants and Jon in the NCAA tournament. They added Evan Brads, who comes over from the NBA world, comes with high recommendations of a couple NBA guys that Jon is really tight with, and Brad Stevens, and man, I'm really blanking on a lot of names.
Will Hardy.
Yes, thank you. So he comes in. Tyler Thornton would have been hired as the 5th and final guy, but now Will Avery is not showing up on the directory. I've not gotten an official answer on where he is or what he's going to be doing, but based on him not showing up anymore, we can safely say he's no longer a member of the coaching staff, and that Duke has another opening. So it wouldn't shock me either way, really, if Duke added to that spot or if they left it open. I mean, they left it open last year and they won 35 games without having a 5th assistant, and they're bringing in a ballyhooed recruiting class without that spot being filled. So, I think if you looked around college basketball, there are plenty of other schools that are not filling out their entire staff. I think and the reason for that, I think more than anything, is just as a coach, you can run yourself into a too many cooks in the kitchen situation where you don't need to have one coach for every 2 or 3 players. There's these staffs already are massive past the assistant coaches. When you get into Mike Schraggy's role, you've got an analytics team that breaks everything down. You've got a multi-person strength and conditioning and all the training. There's already so many people, and you want to prioritize the voices that are going to matter the most. So it does make sense. I mean, not just to cover the bases of why wouldn't Duke add a 5th assistant?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't last year. It's simply put, like you said, just breaking it all down. And again, this is assistant coach in title. Last night, thinking of the timely things, Duke released another Brotherhood podcast that they had recorded right after the Evan Brads hiring, where he sat down with Jon Scheyer himself. I really enjoyed those guys going back and forth and talking about it. And Jon Scheyer, once again, very complimentary of Justin Robinson, Coach J-Rob now, but he's just the director of player development. So in title, the NCAA allows for 5 assistant coaches to be on your staff. Duke had 4 last year, with J-Rob being the director of player development. Schraggy, to your point, is your director of ops, who's a former Duke assistant coach, a former Elon head coach. He's got tons of experience, but they could have had another assistant coach in title if they wanted to, and that remains the case once again here.
Yeah. I feel bad about it because I did talk to J-Rob in Newark after they won. But yeah, I mean, J-Rob was basically the Kaman Malawach whisperer last year. He worked with Kaman very closely. I go back to even the preseason media day that they had where they brought every player basically to the podium podium, I guess. And Kaman's was done with J-Rob next to him and J-Rob answering questions at the same time. Like
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. These staffs are big enough as it is. They don't necessarily need another coach.
Yeah. And if you go down the line across the conference, across the sport, several teams are following kind of the same. We're not going to have 5 assistant coaches in title, but if we wanted to, it's there for us as well. So Evan Brads comes over. It was really fun listening to him and Jon Scheyer kind of talk about the way they see the game, the way they see offenses. And I thought it was really cool and just shows the leader that Jon Scheyer is when he's sitting there asking Evan Brads kind of in their hiring process and in the early conversations. Apparently he asked Evan Brads to pick apart the Duke offense from the past season. And that basically says, I don't know how to do that really. You won 35 games. Clearly something's going right here. But again, just speaking to the level of leadership I think that you're seeing from Scheyer, like there are always areas to improve.
Yeah, and that rhymes with so much of what we know about Duke's program from Jon and from players telling us how Jon coaches them hard and he wants to be as intentional as possible about improving the program, even when the program is coming off of metrics wise one of the best seasons in Ken Pom history and his a Final Four in his 3rd season, and he's tied with it's Brad Underwood and Brad Stevens for the most wins by a Division I coach in their first 3 seasons ever. There should never be anybody making the assumption that Jon Scheyer is sitting back and resting on his laurels, because it's just everything points to the opposite of that at this point, right? Like that was the whole discussion last year with why they had so many guys that had large roles go into the transfer portal. Well, because Jon Scheyer wanted to improve, even though they won 27 games and went to the Elite Eight and were one good half of basketball away from being in the Final Four a year earlier. The roster needed to improve. They needed to get better. They needed to address a lot of hard truths. And just because they do have the season that they had last year doesn't mean that you can't do the same thing over again and have hard truths. And yeah, that's a pretty good place to be as a program. That speaks to the health of things and the good relationships that Jon has. When
you're taking a while to find the hard truths, that's happy to be there for sure. All right. So speaking of great coaching, Duke's on a run right now in the baseball world, thanks to Coach Chris Pollard, as the Blue Devils win the Athens Regional. Now they've got an opportunity to host the NCAA Super Regionals. Let's talk about that to wrap up our show here in just a moment. Yes. Hello, friends. Thank you so much for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and your first watch here today. For your second listen, make sure that you go check out the Portal Show. Locked On's very own Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Go ahead and be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. Also, go ahead and make sure that you check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. Those guys do a remarkable job of breaking everything down in the world of college hoops. And yes, there's a lot of Duke basketball talk per usual. Go check it all out after this show concludes. All right, as we wrap up our program today, I want to talk a little bit about this Duke baseball team bound for the NCAA Super Regionals. Who better to have with me here than continuing a good conversation with Conor O'Neill. We head to Athens this past weekend for Duke, and they're taking on Oklahoma State. A really impressive win out of the gates. You feel good when you win that first game, and it kind of set the tone for what Duke was able to expect and do throughout the course of the weekend. What is the big thing that you noticed from Duke's play this past weekend?
big thing I notice, and there, by the time this publishes, should be a story up. The story's in progress right now. Duke played a bad game against Florida State in their quarterfinal loss of the ACC tournament. And Chris Pollard walked out of that press conference, and to his own word, he was heated. Like he was very unhappy about how Duke had played in that game. And they went on that Saturday like that. You would think maybe that's a rest day. You grind through college baseball season takes so long. It starts in mid-February, and really it starts in about January when practices begin. But they took that Saturday after they lost to Florida State and had an intense practice. Like they scrimmaged each other. They went at it. I'm not saying that they went at it in the sense of a football team goes at it and cracks their heads against each other and goes full contact or anything like that. But they had an intense practice after that. And that kind of reset things. Just kind of washed out the taste of losing to Florida State the way they did. And they took that momentum down to Georgia and rolled with it, right? Like they got on Oklahoma State's pitcher right away. They had an impressive win against Georgia, more so because they held Georgia in their ballpark to, I think it was 3 runs. It was a 6-3 game, wasn't it?
Right. So,
I mean, that's a Georgia team that hits for days. And Kyle Johnson pitched a great game. Duke's bullpen was pretty much what we've come to expect these last 2 or 3 years. They've got just a ton of pitching depth, and they use it. Like they don't ask their starters to pitch into the 7th inning. They know that once they get a certain number of outs from their starter, they've got the rest of the game mapped out the way they want it to. And that's what happened against Georgia. And then they're missing Ben Miller, and AJ Gracia gets them started in the bottom of the 8th with a homer in the what wound up being the final game of the regional. And then they get the 2-run single with an aggressive send by the third base coach, Derek Simmons. And they win 3-2. Just really, really good, strong, fundamental baseball. It's not like they blew them out by a combined like 50-8 or anything like that. They didn't dominate in that sense, but they did everything really between really well and pretty well. And when you do that, when you're not making mistakes and playing flawless baseball, you can roll up some wins.
Yeah. Across the board, I thought that all facets of the game were impressive. The first game, you score 12 runs and you're able to win a 7-run margin in that one. And then for the final game to go ahead and conclude it, you're winning a 3-2 baseball game where you really need your pitchers to keep you in the game. And then that big 8th inning where you're able to take the lead is huge, obviously, as Duke now heads to the Super Regionals. It's a weekend that saw so many upsets across college baseball, right? Where Duke knocks off the number 7 national seed, the top 2 seeds in the sport, and Texas and Vanderbilt, their seasons are over. They're not continuing to play. And then all of a sudden, the 10 seed Ole Miss Rebels, who are paired with Duke, they lose. They lose to Murray State, and now Duke's going to be hosting a Super Regional. I mean, just how significant is this, man?
Yeah, this is part of Chris Pollard's kick down the door, if you want to put a label on it. This is part of his strategy, and hosting games on campus, hosting NCAA tournament games on campus is what every college baseball team wants to do. And it's a little bit karmic, because last year at this time, we're talking about how Duke got kind of shafted out of not hosting a regional after winning the ACC tournament, after putting together an aggregate of being 20-14 against the ACC. They had all the credentials. Like last year they were the Isaiah Thomas meme from the Jordan documentary. Like right. They had all the credentials to fit the criteria of a host last year without hosting. And they went out to Oklahoma and lost 2 games out of 3. Now they get to host Super Regionals. So they're a step deeper into this. And because the Racers pulled it off, held off Ole Miss yesterday, I think it was a 12-3 game at one point, and they won 12-11.
Yeah.
They got in there by the skin of their teeth. Now Duke gets to host games on campus. Like that's what you want. That's like I said, it's the goal of every college baseball team to have NCAA tournament games on their campus, and it makes it so much easier to get to Omaha.
Yeah, I thought it was crazy. You would figure that Duke's won, right? They're not playing on Monday. They were able to close it down on Sunday. You're aware that it's going to Game 7. It's going to the if necessary game between Ole Miss and Murray State. The Duke coaching staff's going to be watching this game on TV and watching it unfold. And Murray State's got this 12-3 lead. And then Ole Miss storms back in the 7th inning. It's 12-11. They're still threatening. And somehow, some way, Murray State is able to slam the door. It gets a little dramatic there in the last few innings before they win it by that final score of 12-11. And to just, confirm your thoughts about the Duke coaching staff being so locked in, within seconds of that game going final, we see Coach Pollard on social media begging people to pack the jack, right, to come out this weekend and be there to support Duke for a home Super Regional series.
Yeah, they'll be putting in it seems like at least 3 parts of the ballpark will have temporary bleachers. We'll get a clearer picture of that later in the week when we actually get to go out to Coombs for some practices and stuff like that before Saturday's game. But they're going to increase the capacity of Coombs, I would guess, in the ballpark of 2,000 to 2,500 people.
Yeah.
I think one temporary set of bleachers will be behind Duke's dugout, one behind the visitors' dugout, which would be Murray State, and then kind of maybe down the right field line also. It's kind of a landlocked ballpark. Like, there's not all that much space to build out because it sits on top of this hill if you've never been. But Duke is going to go to every length they can within the parameters of what they're dealing with the landscape around there to be able to create a home field atmosphere.
So we've got 8 Super Regional series featuring the 16 final teams. The 8 winners of these Super Regional series head to Omaha for the College World Series. Duke has not been in the College World Series since 1961. Half of them are going to be played this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The other half are Saturday, Sunday, Monday series. We've learned that Duke is going to be in that Saturday, Sunday, Monday schedule format to come. So all of that to say, you'll have plenty of coverage over at Devils Illustrated, Connor. How can people support you? What can they expect when they go to the site?
Yeah, Duke.rivals.com is going to be your place. Go to Devils Illustrated and check out coverage all week and all weekend. Not quite sure what I'll have in the next couple days, other than the story that'll be up there. Like I said, hopefully by publication time, but come Friday and into the weekend, I'll be out there. I'll have plenty of coverage. And then we'll get things rolling.
Let's do it. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. All right, man. We'll talk to you again next week. Okay.
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Conor O'Neill joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to bring us to a close here today. Thank you so much for your support with Locked On Blue Devils. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel and wherever it is that you get your podcast. Coming up tomorrow, excited to be joined with Locked On Mavericks. We're doing a little conversation about the Dallas Mavericks and their pursuit of Duke's very own Cooper Flagg. That's coming your way tomorrow right here on Locked On Blue Devils. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.